At first she could scarcely believe her senses, but her friends had soon explained to her just what had happened, and as she had so few fixed ideas about the future life, so had she little to unlearn. But she said it took her many days of earth time before she could fully grasp or absorb all the wonders that lay around her. When once she had fully realized the significance of her new life, and that all eternity lay before her in which to sample the marvels of this land, she was able to restrain her excitement, and as she said, take things a little more quietly. It was while she was in process of the latter that we first met. Once when the three of us were seated in the garden pleasantly discussing all manner of things, we espied, walking up the garden path, a figure that was well known to Edwin and me. He had been our ecclesiastical superior when we were upon the earth plane, and he was what is known as a prince of the church. He was still attired in his customary habiliments, and we were all agreed, when we came to compare notes afterward, that they eminently suited both the place and the conditions. The full-length style and the rich colorings of the robes seemed to blend most harmoniously with all about us. There was nothing incongruous about it, and as he was at full liberty to wear his robes in the spirit world, he had done so, not because of his former position, but through long custom, and because he felt that he thus, in some small measure, helped to add to the colorful beauty of his new habitation. Now, although the high office which he held with distinction upon earth has no counterpart or significance in the spirit world, yet he was well known to many here by name and by sight and by reputation. This provided a further good reason for his retaining his earthly style of clothing, at least for the present. But the deference that his position upon earth had always evoked, he utterly cast aside when he came into the world of spirit. He would have none of it, and he was very insistent that all who knew him, and those who did not, should be strictly attentive to his wishes in this respect. He was very much loved when he was incarnate, and it is but a natural that, with his advent into spirit land, those who knew him should show the same respect as before. Respect is one thing, for we all respect each other in these realms, but deference that should be given to others of greater spirituality is another thing altogether. He early recognized this, so he told us, and from my own personal knowledge of his innate humility, I could guess that such would be the case with him. Our first meeting led to others, and many have been the occasions, and we shall enjoy many more. When we had joined Edwin, Ruth, and myself, where we have sat in the garden or gone forth together. It was during one of our peregrinations together that I asked our former superior if he would give me some brief sketch of his first impressions of the spirit world. What struck him so forcibly when he found himself here was not only the immensity and beauty of the spirit world, but the very description of this world itself in relation to the earth world, and most particularly in relation to the life he had left behind him. First of all, there came the feeling, an almost crushing one, of having wasted his earthly life upon seemingly non-essential irrelevancies and a great deal of useless formularities and formalism. But friends had come to his rescue intellectually, and they had assured him that the time in its personal application had not been wasted, although his life had been encompassed by the pomp and pageantry of his office. However much the latter had engrossed those about him, he had personally never let them become an absorbing factor in his life. He derived much comfort from this reflection. But what he found to be most mentally disturbing was the invalidity of the doctrines which he had perforce upheld. So many of them were tumbling in ruins about him. But again he found friends to guide him, and they did so in a simple and direct manner, such as would appeal to his alert mind, namely, to forget the religious teachings of the earthly life and become acquainted with spirit life and its laws, discard the old, and accept the new. He had therefore made every endeavor to do so, and he had been completely successful. He swept his mind clear of all that had no foundation in truth, and he made the very pleasant discovery that, at last, he was in full enjoyment of absolute spiritual freedom. He found it was so much easier to obey the natural laws of the spirit world than to obey the church's commandments, and it was very pleasant to be rid of the formalities of his earthly position. He could at last speak with his own voice freely, and not with the voice of the church. Altogether, said our former superior, he thought that his greatest impression upon his arrival in the spirit world was this splendid sense of freedom, first of mind and then of body, and made so much more the greater in the spirit world by the measure of its absence in the earth world. Recreations. I have used the word recreation once or twice, but I have not given you any specific details upon this relatively important subject. The merest suggestion that we should have recreations in the spirit world will, most assuredly, come to some minds as an unpleasant shock. Those same minds will instantly think of the many and varied sports and pastimes that are usefully and profitably indulged in upon the earth plane. To transplant, as it were, such fundamentally earthly things into a world of pure spirit is inconceivable. Inconceivable, perhaps, because the whole idea is far-fetched, or because the spirit world should be regarded as a higher state, a state, that is, in which we shall leave behind us all our earthly habits, and live perpetually in a condition of high ecstasy, caring only for those vague, unsubstantial things that our respective religion hinted to us as being the reward of the good. To entertain such suppositions about this life is to suggest that by the very fact of our coming into the spirit world to live, we are at once in the presence of God, or that at least we are within the realm wherein God dwells, and therefore anything even remotely suggestive of earthly customs or manners would be rigidly excluded as too unholy for admission. Such ideas as these are, of course, pure nonsense, since God is not nearer to us in the spirit world than he is to us in the earth world. It is we who are nearer to him, because, among other things, we can see more clearly the divine hand in this world and the expression of his mind. That, however, is a deeper subject, which is not within our province to go into just now. Many of us find our recreation in another form of work. In the spirit world, we do not suffer fatigue, either of body or mind, but to continue unremittingly in the pursuit of any one occupation, without any intermittent change, would soon produce feelings of mental dissatisfaction or unrest. Our powers of application to any given task are immense, but at the same time, we draw a very clear line of limitation for any period of our work in respect to the whole, and beyond that line we do not go. We will exchange our present task for another form of work. We can cease work altogether and spend our time reclining in our homes or elsewhere. We can occupy ourselves in study, or we can engage ourselves in the amusing recreations that abound in these realms. When we have ceased our work for the time being, we are much in the same case as you are who are still upon the earth plane. What shall you do to amuse yourself? You may feel that physical rest is necessary, and so you will incline toward intellectual recreation. And so it is precisely with us here, intellectual recreation, which may take diverse forms is amply provided for in the halls of learning, because learning can itself be a recreation. Ruth and I have spent many happy hours in the library and the Hall of Art, but there have been numberless occasions when we felt the need for something more sturdy, and we have walked down to the sea and gone aboard one of the fine vessels there, and thence paid a visit to one of the islands. And here at the seaside we have one of the most entertaining of our sports. I have already told you how vessels in the spirit world are propelled purely by the process of thought, and I have further indicated how it takes a little time to become proficient in the art of personally applying such propulsion. Such proficiency is ultimately achieved, but we can test our progress and receive valuable aid in our endeavors by taking part in contests upon the water. A clear distinction must be drawn between such contests upon the earth plane and those in the spirit world. Here we are assured, because we know, that all rivalry is purely friendly. There is no gain attached whatever beyond the experience and the acquisition of greater skill, and there are no prizes to be fought for and won. At the end of every race we shall be sure of the greatest help to make us more expert in the increasing and handling of our vessel's speed. One particular diversion that finds a very considerable measure of favor with us here is that of dramatic representation of different kinds. We have beautiful theaters situated in an environment just as beautiful, worthy buildings devoted to a worthy purpose. The architects who design the buildings do so with the same meticulous care as is shown in all their endeavors, and the results, as usual, reveal the degree of active cooperation that exists between the masters of the craft. The embellishment within is the product of skilled artists from the Hall of Fabrics. The gardens without have the same devoted care lavished upon them. The result is as far removed from an earthly theater as it is possible to imagine. Before I speak further upon this subject, I would like to observe that I am fully aware that there are people upon the earth plane who totally disapprove of theaters and everything connected with them. In most instances, such aversion is the outcome of religious upbringing. I cannot alter the truth as I find it in the spirit world to accord with certain religious views held by people still incarnate. I speak of those things which I have witnessed in company with thousands of others, and the fact of strong disapproval by earth people of what I have described as existing in the spirit world in no way proves such things to be non-existent, and therefore my statement to be false. My position for observation is incomparably superior to theirs, because I have left the earth world and become an inhabitant of the spirit world. If our descriptions of the world we now inhabit were to be altered to suit every individual taste and every preconception of what the spirit world ought to be, we might just as well cease forthwith to give any further descriptions, since after being so tampered with, they would be worthless. Lest I should have conveyed any false impression in saying this, let me add that anyone who expresses disapproval of all or any form of recreation he found here, such a person would never be asked to indulge in them. With others of similar views, he would find himself in a little community apart, there to remain safely out of range of all supposed earthly things, and able to live in such a place as he thought heaven ought to be. I have met such people, and it was not long, as a rule, before they abandoned their home-made heaven and walked abroad into the finer, greater heaven, which is the work of the greatest mind. Each theater of this realm is familiar to us by the type of play that is presented in it. The plays themselves are frequently vastly different from those that are customary upon the earth plane. We have nothing that is sordid, nor do the authors of plays insist upon harrowing their audiences. We can see many problems problem plays where social questions of the earth plane are dealt with. But unlike the earth plane, our plays will provide a solution to the particular problem, a solution which the earth is too blind to adopt. We can go to see comedies where I do assure you the laughter is invariably much more hearty and voluminous than is ever to be heard in the theater of the earth plane. In the spirit world, we can afford to laugh at much that we once, when incarnate, treated with deadly seriousness and earnestness. We have witnessed grand historical pageants showing the greater moments of a nation, and we have seen, too, history as it really was, and not as it is often so fancifully written about in the history books. But surely the most impressive and at the same time interesting experience is to be present at one of these pageants where the original participants themselves reenact the events with which they were concerned, first as the events were popularly thought to have occurred, and then as they actually took place. These representations are among the most widely attended here, and never are there more attentive and rapt members of the audience than those players who, during their earth lives, played the parts in stage plays of the famous characters whom they are now seeing in the flesh. In such pageants, the coarser, depraved, and debased incidents are omitted entirely, because they would be distasteful to the audience, and indeed to all in this realm. Nor are we shown scenes which are, in the main incidents, nothing but battle and bloodshed and violence. At first one experiences a strange feeling in beholding, in person, the bearers of names famous throughout the earth world, but after a time one becomes perfectly accustomed to it, and it becomes part of our normal existence. The most noticeable difference between our two worlds in this matter of recreations is created by our respective requirements. We have no need here to take bodily exercise, vigorous or otherwise, nor do we need to go out into the fresh air. Our spirit bodies are always in perfect condition. We suffer no disorders of any kind, and the air, which cannot be other than fresh, penetrates into every corner of our homes and buildings, where it fully retains its purity. It would be impossible for it to become impaired or contaminated in any way. It is to be expected, then, that our recreations should be more upon the mental plane than upon the physical. As most of the outdoor games of the earth world involve the use of a ball, it will be appreciated that here, where the law of gravity operates under different conditions from yours, anything in the nature of propelling a ball by striking it would lead to quite hopeless results. I am speaking now of games of a competitive nature. On the earth plane, skill in games is acquired by the mastery of the mind over the muscles of the body, when once the latter has been brought to a healthy condition. But here we are always in a healthy condition, and our muscles are always under the complete and absolute control of our minds. Efficiency is quickly gained, whether it is in playing upon a musical instrument, painting a picture, or in any other pursuit that requires the use of the limbs. It will be seen, therefore, that most of the usual games would lose their point here. And it must be remembered that indoors or outdoors are precisely one to us here. We have no changes in weather during recurrent seasons. The great central sun is forever shining. It is never anything but delightfully warm. We never feel the necessity for a brisk walk to set our blood circulating the better. Our homes and our houses are not necessities, but additions to an already enjoyable life. You will find many people here who do not possess a home. They do not want one. They will tell you, for the sun is perpetually shining, and the temperature is perpetually warm. They are never ill or hungry or in want of any kind, and the whole beautiful realm is theirs to wander in. will begin in another video.